My girlfriend's single friends convinced her to set up a phony breakup test on me in an attempt to get me more committed, but it totally backfired when I made the decision to end our relationship. Instead, before we get started with today's video, I need your help because we've noticed that the channel is losing some traction. Subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us because it's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Thank you so much, and let's get started. Hey Reddit, buckle up, because this is a wild ride that lasted for 2 years, and I'm still processing how crazy it all got. I've been lurking here forever, but never had drama worth posting until now, using a throwaway because some people involved know my main account. Since I'm 29 years old and my ex-girlfriend Chloe is 26 years old, we dated for 3 years. I don't want the trouble if they discover this, but this story is too strange not to share. We've been together for 5 years, and for the past 8 months, I've been working in commercial real estate. I started out as an agent and now run my own brokerage, and she worked in marketing coordination, earning about $38,000. To put things in perspective, I grew up in a trailer park in rural Oklahoma, the first person in my family to graduate from college, let alone earn a respectable living. My family views me as their personal ATM, and my ex's family had money, so they were even more interested in keeping her around. Went down, so I'm 29 and work in commercial real estate. I started out as an agent right out of college making almost nothing, but I'm good with people and understand numbers, so I worked my way up. By the time this story begins, I was making about $127,000 a year, which isn't a lot of money, but it's pretty good for someone who grew up eating government cheese. Chloe and I had been together for 3.5 years, and she was making about $38,000 as a marketing coordinator. We had been living together for 8 months in this nice 2-bedroom apartment that cost us $1,450 a month. Since I made more money, I was able to cover about 65% of our shared expenses, which seemed fair. In the same trailer park where I grew up, my mom works as a housekeeper, my dad does odd jobs whenever he feels like it, and my sister Brittany never completed high school, had 3 children with different fathers, and basically expected me to take care of all her financial issues. When I started earning a respectable living, my family's attitude completely changed. I was their favorite son/brother, but only when they needed something. Every conversation eventually turned into hints about how I was forgetting where I came from or how I was being treated like a human ATM with legs. When I started dating Chloe, she fell in love with me right away, not because I is good for her, but rather because her parents have a successful dental practice, and my family was already planning how they could take advantage of that connection. They would make offensive remarks about how I had landed a rich girl and that I should lock that down quickly before she realized she could do better. My mom would literally ask me when I was bringing Chloe around again because she wanted to get to know her family better. To put it another way, she wanted to network her way into their social circle. Chloe and I had a good thing going, or so I thought. We had our routines. I would get up early and then prepare coffee, and on Sundays, we would prepare meals together. We had this comfortable rhythm where we could coexist without drama. She would watch her reality TV shows while I read real estate market reports, and we would both be perfectly content. I didn't know that Chloe had been complaining to her friends about how predictable our relationship had become. Her friends were Amber, Tessa, and Morgan, 3 single women who seemed to have a new dating disaster story every week. These women would spend entire brunch conversations analyzing whether a guy texting back in 2 hours instead of 1 meant he was losing interest. Amber had recently ended a 2-year relationship in which the guy had been seeing someone else for the previous 6 months. She had learned of this fact through Instagram when the other woman shared a picture of herself wearing Amber's boyfriend's college sweatshirt. Morgan, whose ex-husband had disappeared to another state with his secretary, couldn't seem to keep a relationship going for more than a few months because she had a tendency to get bored and ruin things whenever guys got too comfortable. These 3 were bitter about their love lives and apparently couldn't stand seeing Chloe happy and stable while they dealt with chaos. So they began to fill her head with ideas about how I was getting too comfortable and how she needed to create some excitement to keep me interested. They would have these girls' nights where they would analyze every aspect of our relationship as if they were relationship experts, rather than serial dating failures. Looking back, there were probably signs I missed that Chloe had started. She would make strange remarks like, "At least they're passionate," or, "I wonder what it's like to have that kind of intensity." At the time, I assumed she was just having typical relationship thoughts, when everyone ponders the path not taken. But apparently her friends were telling her that comfortable relationships are relationship death and that men need to be reminded of what it's like to be single. She would make small remarks about how our weekends had become routine or ask if I ever missed the excitement of being single. The crazy thing is that I wasn't even dragging my feet on commitment. If she had just talked to me about wanting to get engaged, we probably could have had that conversation within a reasonable time frame. Instead, her friends convinced her that manipulation was the better strategy, actually making her believe that honest communication was for weak women who didn't understand male psychology. About 2 months before everything exploded, Chloe started acting differently, not suspiciously different, but different. They convinced her that I was taking her for granted and that she needed to shake things up if she wanted me to step up and propose. She started following all these Instagram accounts about living your best life and embracing your independence because she seemed to be having some sort of quarter-life-y crisis about our relationship. At first, I thought maybe she was just stressed about work because her company had been restructuring and people were worried about layoffs. So I tried to be supportive and told her that if she lost her job, we could cut back on expenses and maybe move somewhere cheaper until she found someone else who was more affordable. She would make random comments about feeling like she was missing out on her 20s by being in such a serious relationship. The comments became more pointed, as she began saying things like, "I wonder what it would be like to be on my own again," or "Sometimes I feel like I settled down too young." This was confusing because she had been the one pushing for us to move in together in the first place, talking about our future and creating Pinterest boards for home decorating ideas. I even offered to help her update her resume and reach out to my professional contacts if she wanted to explore other opportunities. Began to gain weight. She would talk about how her friends were living their lives while she was playing house with me. She would share articles she had read about people who married young and later regretted it. And she would talk about wanting to travel alone, perhaps backpacking across Europe to discover who she was. She would send me these articles about quarter life crisis and ask me if I ever worried that we were missing out on important life experiences. This continued for about 2 weeks, during which time she became increasingly agitated about our supposedly dull life together, picking fights over trivial things like how we always went to the same grocery store or how predictable our date nights had become. She would always make an excuse about being tired or having plans with her friends, but one evening she hit me with the big conversation. We were sitting on our couch after dinner, the same couch we had chosen together at a furniture store about 6 months prior, when she began to cry real tears instead of the fake ones. She explained that she had been thinking a lot and wasn't sure if she was ready for such a serious relationship. She gave a lengthy speech about how much she loved me, but felt like she was losing herself in our relationship, explaining that she had never truly experienced independence because she had gone from living with roommates while still in college. Talked about how she felt like she was becoming too domestic and losing her sense of adventure. Then came the knockout punch. She wanted us to take a break, not a breakup, as she was careful to specify. A month-long separation during which we wouldn't see each other and wouldn't talk about anything other than the necessities of the apartment and bills. She said she needed time to consider whether this was what she wanted or if she was just staying because it was comfortable and familiar. She had everything planned out and had looked into getting her own studio apartment, and she believed that a month apart would give us greater clarity on whether or not we were meant to be together. She even gave a whole speech about how taking breaks was mature and demonstrated our commitment to making the right decisions. Her presentation was so mature and reasonable that I found myself nodding along, even though every word was like a knife in my chest. She talked about how much she loved me and how this wasn't about seeing other people, but rather about personal growth and making sure we were choosing each other for the right reasons. She kept stressing that this was only temporary and that she simply needed time to herself. I was devastated, but I tried to be understanding, so I told her that if she needed time to think things out, I would respect that. I even offered to find temporary housing since she would likely find a roommate more easily. Chloe had never been the type to have these deep philosophical thoughts about life choices. She was practical and straightforward, the kind of person who made decisions and stuck with them. However, when someone you love is crying and telling you that they're confused about their feelings, you want to believe them and help them work it out. The next 3 weeks were incredibly brutal. I moved into my friend Jake's spare bedroom, paying him $650 per month, while still paying my share of the rent at the apartment Chloe and I shared because I didn't want to leave her in a financial Bind while she was allegedly when I told my mom that Chloe and I were taking a break. She panicked about losing her connection to Chloe's wealthy family. She even said, "You better fix this situation fast before she finds someone with more money." Thanks for the emotional support, Mom. Jake was a good friend about the whole situation, but I could tell he felt I was being played. He would make subtle remarks about how convenient it was that Chloe needed space right before her lease was up for renewal, or how strange it was that someone going through an identity crisis would be so active on social media. I wasn't prepared to hear it yet, though. Started this lecture about how I needed to fight for my woman and not let her go because of my pride. My dad's advice was to buy Chloe expensive gifts to win her back, like jewelry, flowers, or maybe a nice weekend trip. He kept saying that women need to be reminded of what they have, so I should be fighting harder to keep her. He suggested that I write her love letters or show up at her work with roses. My sister Brittany was more direct, asking if this meant I wouldn't be able to help her with car payments, and then suggested that I should pop the question right away to lock Chloe down. None of them cared about how I was feeling or whether this situation was healthy for me. They were only concerned about their access to Chloe's family connections and what this might mean for their ability to gain an advantage. I'm usually pretty focused when dealing with clients or analyzing real estate deals, but when I tried to explain that maybe some space was good for us to evaluate our relationship, they looked at me like I was crazy. My work turned into a nightmare. I missed 2 crucial client calls because I was staring at my phone waiting for Chloe to text me back when I messed up some paperwork on a major lease deal. My boss pulled me aside after I messed up some paperwork on a major lease deal and asked if everything was okay at home. I had to admit that I was having relationship issues, which was in commercial real estate. It's important to project stability and confidence because clients don't want to work with someone whose personal life is in disarray. He was understanding, but he advised me to get my act together before it affected my reputation. Meanwhile, Chloe appeared to be doing well during this alleged difficult soul-searching period. Her social media was filled with pictures of her out with friends, trying new restaurants, going to art galleries, and attending concerts. She looked happy and carefree, while I was barely holding it together. She would share these meticulously chosen photos that made her life appear as though it were an adventure documentary, with captions about discovering who she was and embracing her independence. The psychological warfare was the worst part. Every few days, she would text me carefully crafted messages meant to keep me hooked but confused. For example, "I miss the way you make coffee in the morning," followed by, "But I'm really enjoying having my own space to think." The mixed signals were meant to keep me off balance and hopeful. I had never heard of any trendy brunch place, and I had never seen pictures of her at a pottery class or a yoga session in the park. She was living it up like someone who had recently been released from prison. I started losing weight because I had no appetite. Food tasted like cardboard, and I kept forgetting to eat meals. I probably lost 15 pounds in 3 weeks. Jake became concerned about me because I would sit in his living room staring at my phone, waiting for Chloe to text me back. He started bringing me food and making sure I ate at least 1 real meal a day. The following day, she posted a picture of herself hiking with her friends, looking like she didn't care at all. She then did something that suggested she was moving on without me. I became obsessed with reading into every detail of her posts because Facebook was constantly analyzing every photo and caption for clues about her emotional state. For example, when she shared a picture of herself laughing at a restaurant, I would spend hours wondering if she was happier without me. When she shared a quote about independence and self-discovery, I would interpret it as confirmation that she was planning to end things permanently. The logical part of my brain knew that if someone truly needed space for introspection, they probably wouldn't be constantly posting on social media and attending social events. But when you're in love and they've convinced you that they're going through an emotional crisis, you want to think that their behavior makes sense somehow. Inconsistencies. After 3 weeks of this torture, I was beginning to accept that our relationship was probably over. I was still heartbroken, but I was trying to find a way to move on and rebuild my life without Chloe. I had even begun looking at apartment listings for when my month at Jake's ended, when everything changed drastically. That I later learned that there had been a major falling out between Chloe and her group of friends. Apparently, Morgan had been jealous of all the attention Chloe was getting during this crisis and had begun making remarks about how Chloe was being dramatic and dragging me along for too long. She felt that Chloe was receiving all the benefits of sympathy and support while Morgan's own dating failures were being ignored, which resulted in a huge argument between the whole situation ended with Amber feeling horrible about what they had done to me. It seems that she had been second-guessing the manipulation for weeks, especially as she saw me at the grocery store looking like I had been hit by a truck, and it had made her sick with guilt when the friend group fell apart over their disagreement about how long to continue the charade. Morgan accused Chloe of enjoying the manipulation too much, and Chloe accused Morgan of being jealous that their plan was working so well. Morgan reportedly said something about Chloe becoming a psychopath who enjoyed watching me suffer. My heart started racing when she called me on a Saturday night at around 11 p.m., sounding like she had been crying for hours. Her voice was shaky, and she kept saying she was sorry before she even told me what she had done. She said she needed to tell me something important about Chloe that I deserved to know, and that she couldn't sleep at night knowing what they'd done to me. I thought maybe something bad had happened. Maybe Chloe was hurt, sick, or in some sort of trouble. I asked Amber what was wrong, and she utterly destroyed my world when she admitted that the entire breakup crisis was a hoax. Chloe's friends convinced her that the best way to get me to move toward engagement was to make me feel as though I might lose her. They had literally scripted parts of our conversations and planned out her social media strategy like it was a marketing campaign. According to Amber, they had been planning this relationship intervention for months after Chloe complained that our relationship felt too predictable and comfortable. Her friends had convinced her that comfortable relationships lead to men never proposing because they get all the benefits without the commitment. They had read articles about relationship psychology and discovered all these theories. Amber explained that they had meticulously planned every detail, including the timing of the crisis to coincide with our lease renewal, the specific things Chloe should say to make her doubts seem genuine, and the social media strategy to make her seem as though she was thriving without me while still posting enough nostalgic content to keep me hopeful. They had even planned out which restaurants she should go to and what kinds of activities she should post about to make her life seem exciting and fulfilling. She went into detail about how they would monitor my social media activity and adjust Chloe's behavior based on how I responded to various triggers. When I appeared to be accepting the breakup, Chloe would send me a nostalgic text to entice me back in, and when I appeared too hopeful, she would post something. Amber was actually apologizing for how well their psychological experiment had worked, saying that they had been amazed at how easily they could manipulate my emotions and keep me in this state of anxious uncertainty. They had bet on which tactics would work best and celebrated when I responded exactly as they had predicted. They found it fascinating how predictable male psychology was. The entire situation was a calculated psychological manipulation meant to break me down emotionally and make me so desperate to keep Chloe that I would propose right away when she decided she was ready to get back together. I hung up on Amber and sat in Jake's living room for about 2 hours feeling like I was going to pass out, because Chloe would have this dramatic realization that she couldn't live without me and then come running back expecting me to be so grateful that I'd propose on the spot. All of the emotions I'd experienced over the previous 3 weeks, the anxiety, the self-doubt, the fear of losing her, the sleepless nights wondering what I'd done wrong, had been completely manufactured for their amusement. They had turned my sincere love for Chloe into a social experiment and treated my emotional pain like a game they were winning. The following evening, Chloe stopped by Jake's house to see how I was handling the separation and brought me homemade. I confronted her right away with what Amber had told me, and she started stammering and denying it at first. However, when I repeated back specific details that Amber had shared about their planning process, including direct quotes from their group chat and details about their monitoring system, she broke down and admitted everything. The tears started to flow right away, but this time I wasn't buying the performance. She said the whole thing had started as a simple plan to motivate me toward engagement, but had gotten more complicated than she'd intended. Claimed that her friends had persuaded her that our relationship was stagnant and that I was taking her for granted. They had told her that men need to be reminded of what they could lose in order to appreciate what they have. So the fake breakup was supposed to create urgency and make me realize I needed to propose before I lost her. She repeatedly apologized, saying she never meant for it to go on so long or cause me so much pain. She tried to downplay it as just some innocent girl talk that got out of hand, as if they had been planning a surprise party instead of psychological warfare. How much she truly loved me and wanted to be with me. She claimed that it had been harder than she had anticipated to watch me suffer, and that she had told her friends several times that she wanted to call it off. However, she immediately began attempting to manipulate me again, saying that if I truly loved her, I would be able to forgive one mistake, and that my reaction was evidence that perhaps her friends were correct about my lack of commitment to our future. She implied that the fact that I was so angry demonstrated that I didn't truly understand her or care about her emotional needs. She claimed that the plan had worked because it demonstrated how much I cared for her and that we could use this experience to strengthen our relationship. I told her that rather than making me want to pop the question, she had done the exact opposite. I couldn't marry someone who believed that psychological manipulation was a legitimate relationship tactic, especially someone who could watch me suffer while knowing it was all fake. I explained that what bothered me most was not just the deception itself, but the fact that she had watched me suffer for 3 weeks while knowing it was all fake. She had seen me lose weight, struggle at work, and worry about our future while she was out having fun with her friends, treating my feelings like entertainment. She had repeatedly looked me in the eye during those 3 weeks and pretended to be going through a crisis, knowing that she was using me for her own gain. She was acting when she talked about needing space to find herself and was following a script when she said she wasn't sure if she still loved me. She was purposefully trying to hurt me to get the reaction her friends wanted. Every tear and every moment of supposed vulnerability, every expression of love and regret, had been planned for maximum emotional impact. I thought about all the sleepless nights I'd spent wondering what I'd done wrong in our relationship, all the self-doubt about whether I was good enough for her, and the anxiety about our future together. While she was out posting Instagram photos at art galleries, Chloe kept pleading and promising that she would never listen to her friends again. She suggested couples therapy to work through the trust issues, saying she would do anything to fix this and rebuild what we had. She even offered to cut off contact with her friends completely and move to a new place where we could start over. She was using every manipulation technique she could think of, but I was done. I told her that the trust between us was completely destroyed and that I couldn't build a life with someone who was capable of that level of deception and manipulation. Said once more, how could I be sure that any future crisis or issue in our relationship was genuine and not just a test? She continued to cry and tell me that she loved me, but I explained that true love isn't about purposefully hurting your partner for your own gain. Rather, it's about honest communication and not psychological games meant to trick someone into proposing. I told her that what she had done wasn't love, but rather narcissistic abuse disguised as a relationship strategy. Within 2 weeks, I had found my own apartment, a lovely one-bedroom place for $1,100 a month in a completely different part of town. It felt so liberating to start over somewhere new with no memories of Chloe. I blocked her everywhere after desperate attempts, including calling from various numbers, showing up at my workplace, and even having her mother call to make her case. Her mom left a voicemail stating that Chloe was just a young girl who made a mistake and that her friends tried to reach out with pitiful excuses, with Amber claiming they were only trying to help Chloe. Tessa said I was overreacting because all relationships involve strategy, and Morgan actually suggested their plan worked because it proved how much I cared. They completely missed the fact that it had demonstrated Chloe's capacity for systematic emotional abuse. This experience taught me to be more selective about who I trusted because I had been so focused on being a good boyfriend and son, and a brother that I hadn't noticed, surrounded by people who only valued me for what I could offer. I threw myself into work with new vigor and began to think more broadly. The experience of manipulation had actually taught me valuable skills about reading people's motivations, making me a better negotiator and a better judge of character in business relationships. Within 6 months, I had opened Thompson Commercial Properties, and while Chloe's life fell apart, she moved back with her parents after losing her marketing job. She faced daily arguments and family pressure to leave behind a good man and her manipulative friend group, completely dissolved after their argument, with everyone blaming one another for how badly their plan backfired. I wasn't paying attention to their drama because I was too busy growing my business and enjoying my freedom from toxic people. Fast forward to the present, when my life had completely changed and I was making about $280,000 a year, expanding to a team of 5 agents working under me, buying a house in a nice neighborhood for $340,000, driving a BMW 540 nothing fancy, but nice enough to show I'd made it, and, most importantly, getting engaged to an amazing woman named Sarah, a successful real estate attorney. Everything was going great until the desperate messages started coming. Chloe sent me a message on LinkedIn, which I had blocked everywhere else. She said she had heard about my business success through mutual connections and wanted to congratulate me. She said she had always known I was capable of great things and was proud to see me doing so well. The message was obviously meant to seem friendly and supportive while opening the door for further contact. But she kept getting more direct. She found my business email and sent a message asking if we could grab coffee to catch up as friends. When I didn't respond, she became more direct and began sending longer emails expressing how much she had changed as a person and how sorry she was about how our relationship ended. It turned out that Chloe's life had not improved over the previous 2 years after she was laid off from her marketing job. The job market in her field was competitive, and her skills had become stale during the time she'd spent focusing on our relationship drama rather than professional development. She'd been working a series of temporary positions and part-time gigs, earning maybe $25,000 a year if she was lucky. Living with her parents had become more difficult. They were always criticizing her for ending her relationship with me and comparing her to their friends' daughters who were getting married and buying homes. The pressure and criticism were wearing her down, and from what I've heard through the grapevine, she was essentially being treated like a failure who had ruined her own life through poor choices, blowing through her savings during the periods of unemployment, and had the woman who had psychologically tortured me for amusement was now pleading with me for a job. She sent this pitiful email apologizing for everything that had happened between us and stating that she had learned and grown from the experience. She also had over $8,000 in credit card debt. Her car had been repossessed after she missed multiple payments, and she was using the bus or her parents' car to get around. This is where it gets really good, because through our mutual network, she had heard that I was doing well enough to hire people, and she was desperate for me to give her a job. Clearly written and rewritten several times in an entry-level administrative role, the email highlighted her qualifications and went into painful detail about her financial struggles and how her parents were threatening to fire her if she didn't get her act together. She said she had been thinking about me all the time and realized that losing me was the biggest mistake of her life, both romantically and professionally, since I obviously had the business acumen she'd never recognized. In essence, she was admitting that she destroyed her own life by destroying our relationship. Her former accomplices then began contacting me, and Amber sent me a Facebook message asking if my company needed any freelance marketing help because Tessa reached out to me asking if I had any administrative openings because she was desperate for steady income with benefits and had apparently been hopping between temp jobs. She was tired of not having health insurance or paid time off and struggled to pay her bills with part-time retail work. She tried to present herself as someone who had always believed in my potential and had just been caught up in drama that wasn't her fault, but Morgan took the cake. She actually sent me a message asking if I wanted to go on a date, stating that she had always thought I was amazing and had been waiting for the right moment to show her interest. The woman who had assisted in organizing my psychological breakdown was now attempting to portray herself as a romantic option, as if I should be flattered by her attention. It was quite satisfying to see these women, who had previously thought it was funny to play with my emotions, now attempting to win my favor because I was successful and they were all struggling. They had all assumed that their manipulation would work and that I would be so happy to have Chloe back that I would pop the question right away, and they could all profit from my success through their relationship with her. My family's response was predictably terrible as well. When word spread about my business success, they began calling me frequently again, and my mother suggested that I should forgive, and my dad pitched me his latest get-rich-quick scheme and said Chloe could help me network with her family's wealthy connections, which had always been something I was interested in. My sister asked if I could co-sign a loan for her since I was making a lot of money, and he suggested that getting back together with Chloe would help me project a stable image as a businessman. However, I had learned my lesson about allowing toxic people back into my life. So I replied to Chloe's job inquiry with a professional email, explaining that although I appreciated her interest in Thompson commercial properties, I didn't think it would help me. Would be appropriate to work together given our past interactions. I wished her luck in her job search and advised her to look into other options in the area. The email was courteous but firm, offering no room for further discussion or negotiation. with her manipulative friends. I didn't reply at all because they didn't deserve the courtesy of a response, and interacting with them would only lead to more attempts to manipulate my family. I made it clear that my business success didn't mean that I was going to become their personal bank, and that their sudden renewed interest in my life was blatantly self-serving. I told them that if they wanted a relationship with me, it had to be founded on genuine care and respect rather than financial opportunism. The best part was that word spread quickly through our people began contacting me for business opportunities and networking connections after hearing from their mutual social circle about how well I was doing and how professionally I had handled their desperate attempts to reconnect. Meanwhile, when word spread about Chloe and her former friend's manipulation scheme, their reputation suffered. The last I heard, according to the grapevine, Chloe was still living with her parents and working part-time at a mall clothing store, making barely above minimum wage. Amber had moved back to her hometown because she could no longer afford to live in our city and was working at her uncle's insurance office. And Tessa was working at a call center earning minimum wage and still bitter about her divorce, posting angry tirades on social media about how unfair life was. The irony that Morgan was enduring emotional abuse in order to ensure her financial stability was not lost on her. She was seeing a man who was wealthy but mistreated her.